Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
The 25th of July, 2021. Let me take you back. It was day 2 of the Tokyo Olympics, and Team GB were already celebrating their first medal. Chelsea Giles winning a judo bronze in the women's under 52 kilogram category. Further success in the Paralympics a month later, as Chris Skelly won Britain's first gold in 25 years and celebrated by saying he wanted to eat pork pies, and then Elliot Stewart with a silver. I'm Michael.
And I'm John, and despite all that recent success, it's not been all plain sailing for our latest guest on Great British Bosses, the podcast from Anything But Footy that speaks to the people behind the success of British sport, the men and women effectively charged with ensuring medal success at Olympics, Paralympics and Commonwealth Games, as well as increasing participation and fitness levels across the country.
So hi, I'm Andrew Scoular. I'm Chief Executive of British Judo, and really pleased to be here. And you brought a tear to my eye again when you mentioned Chelsea Giles and the guys' medal, so it was great to hear that again.
Andrew, great to have you on the podcast. Great to have you on Great British Bosses, and a great time to speak to you as well, because as far as British Judo is concerned, these are good times. A record medal haul at the Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi, gold and a bronze on the final day, adding to the 5 medals already won. And you mentioned Chelsea Giles, of course, they're winning a silver on the first day. You must be pretty pleased with how your elite athletes are going right now.
Yeah, it's been a really positive start, and especially for the junior ones that are coming through. So you have Kelly Peters and Pollard, Emma Reid, who are all making a good transition from junior into senior. And that was really pleasing to see that our juniors are now starting to come through and perform on the world stage and win medals. The other thing is we've got the men starting to come through. So we won 2 men's medals, which is really quite exciting with Sam Hall and Lachlan to do that. So it's just really positive from our point of view, and it's a great end to the year.
And you talk about that tear in your eye when we think back to the Tokyo Olympics. As a CEO of an NGB, how important is it when your sport gets that medal? I mean, it's not a guarantee of success and funding and everything that comes, but just the realization of all that hard work as a governing body.
Yeah, and it's especially the way it was won as well. I'll tell you a bit of a story about it, because I wasn't able to go to Tokyo for obvious reasons, and I managed to get into a holiday at the same time. So I was actually in New York, and it was like the middle of the morning trying to watch it, and my phone went down. So I had to run up to the Apple store, which is a 24-hour Apple store, watching the fight, and actually almost like tears in my eyes when she won. So it was a fantastic element. But it's great for the sport. It's not just the individual, but great for the actual team that got her there, the whole performance team, the whole organization, that not just Chelsea, but the whole team, because they all play their own part, whether they're training partner and supporting during the day, and especially in a a challenging environment, which Tokyo was for the athletes as well. And also, there were certain other elements that made it so special for Chelsea as well, in order just to get there, and that she was recovering from COVID and things like that. So it was a great performance and outstanding for us, as were all the performances. I mean, they all fought well, and it was great. And then the Paralympics just added icing on the cake to it. And as you said, Chris, was just so special to see that. And the other one, Elliot, outshining his dad, who won a bronze in Seoul, outshining his dad to get a silver was another aspect to it. But it really brought the sport together, and I think that's the movement got behind the actual athletes and the performance program and the whole organization, especially as we're coming out of a really difficult COVID period.
Talking of a really difficult COVID period, we're about to enter another one, it appears. You've got the British Championships coming up in the next few weekends at Sheffield. Has that changed anything for you?
Well, we were pretty stringent on the restrictions anyway. We put a lot of places, everybody had to do lateral flow. We put that at the front. They've got to show the passport. We've been pretty proud, and we follow on IGF guidelines. And in fact, today we've actually increased those so that we're restricting some of the back office elements to it. So unfortunately, we're having to take away some of the media access to reduce that in this sort of, because we're very conscious the back of stage element where those people are. We've got elite athletes around and officials, but we're still allowing the spectators in and asking for them all to mask up at the event. So we're taking as much precautions as possible, but we don't want to stop things happening, because it is a real opportunity and we're able to do it. And I think the first weekend with our cadets and pre-cadets will be great. And then the following weekend, you will have Chelsea fighting. You'll see our Olympic stars fighting in the event, which will be a real great fill-up to the end of the year again.
And one of the things about British Judo, the BJA, established in 1948, I believe, and has been going successfully since, is one of these sporting organisations in this country, Andrew, where you are responsible for everything. So it is the elite, and as you say, we'll see them at the British Championships, but you're responsible for putting on events like the British Championships, but then also for the clubs and the coaches and getting people active. You are right across the board. It's not like, say, British swimming or British athletics, where they are literally looking after the elite athletes.
Yeah, that's very true. We're just in the process of doing our new strategic plan, and it's quite interesting. The four sort of key elements that we would look on that is about growing participation, how best we do that. And the other aspect is that we believe that we are got a particular USP, if you want to call it that, in that we can get into areas that other sports don't necessarily get into. And so how do we actually create communities within that and being more diverse in that? And that's really, tackling some of the inequalities that are around the country, and the government's levelling up and things like that. So I think we're quite uniquely placed to help that in smaller communities and local areas for that type of sport. So we're picking that up. And then the sort of third element to that is, how do we actually create the pathways from there? And it's not just pathways to elite performance, it's pathways to long life participation. And I think judo in a way is a bit of a life skill in some respect, when you're taking things like being able to fall properly, for example. And it's probably hark back to Jaxie falling off his bike in Superstars, and didn't hurt himself because he knew how to fall properly, things like that. So it's really, for us, I see it as a life skill just as much as swimming is. And the World Health Organization see that as well, that, learning to fall, not just in the playground, but at work or elderly people, is quite a skill in itself. So looking at that and how do we actually deal with that? But we've also got VI, so our visually impaired judo, we've got learning disability judo and so on. And we're doing a lot of work on self-defense or personal safety more than anything else. And it's quite interesting. We're doing a project up in the Northwest where we've got 50 Muslim women regularly participating in a judo exercise, and it's based around self-defense, but it's physical activity, it's community-based, and they're actually gaining confidence. And it's all part of our values and our core values and how that works. So that nurturing sort of pathway is not just to performance, and it's not just in participation. It can be in coaching and officiating and so on. And we've been, while we're getting some success through our performance athletes, we've now getting more success through our referees. We've got now 2 international referees, in fact 3. But Lisa Rivers and Stephen Newbury, they're all now on that pathway to hopefully refereeing an Olympic Games. So there's a pathway there. And then, of course, we've got a non-contact element. And you might have saw in the Paralympics the kata and the karate. Well, there's kata and judo as well. So there's an opportunity for the non-contact demonstration display element to that. And then we've still got our grading. So, the different colours of belts that are there, people can perform not necessarily on the mat, but recreationally and get their gradings and go up to a black belt and beyond. So I think there's lots of opportunities that you can actually pick up in the sport. And obviously the icing on the cake, the last 1% of our of our membership are the ones that win the medals, and they have a benefit across the whole organisation, and they see that as well. And they're putting a lot back in to that. A lot of our Olympic athletes have gone back into the clubs after the games and done a lot of activity to help promote the sport back in and recover from COVID.
And that previous strategic plan for 2017 to 2021, the aim was to increase participation in judo to 50,000, as I understand it. Was that reached? Is there still the appetite for these traditional martial arts when you think that UFC and MMA and things like that now are huge in terms of television audiences?
Yeah, I mean, we were almost there, I'll have to say, and then COVID hit us. And of that 50,000, that's 50,000 in membership of the British Judo Association. There are another 50,000 people doing judo, but not members. So we have different organisations, people who do it as private schools and so on, who are not necessarily members of that. And there are clubs who are members, but they only have 30 odd, 50 odd members, and they've got 1,500 who are recreational but not members. So that's one of the issues we have to address. So there is an appetite for it. I think we're playing a lot of parents, and we do a lot of research and insight work and find out why people participate. And 60% of our membership is below the age of 18. So parents have a lot of influence on that. So the sort of the values that judo give you are really quite important, and how we actually address that. And we've gone back to the Kano values, which were done in 1882, and they still stand today. That courage, respect, modesty, friendship, humor, politeness, self-control, all those things are really attractive to parents, and especially around that self-control and the elements to that. And so we've done a lot of research in schools where people would put judo in, and the performance in classes, behavior in classes improved extensively. So we're using a lot of that to recruit elements to it, and we're doing a lot more on changing away from the traditional going into schools and running sessions to a more digital approach, targeting parents and doing that and showing the values of it.
So when you look at the kind of UFC, MMA type of disciplines, is it important then that you keep your status as an Olympic sport, and then obviously next year back as part of the Commonwealth Games in the West Midlands where you're based, of course? Yeah,
it is very important. And to be fair, judo in the Olympic balances, there are only 2 other sports, I think, athletics and swimming, that have the range of national countries participating in Olympic Games. So, for example, in judo, there are 123, I think it was this time around, nations participating in the Olympic finals, which is massive. And you look at the scope across the world in judo, and the number of nations that are participating and winning medals at that is much, much, much greater now. So I think there's a real protection around keeping that, and I believe obviously all the combat sports are probably protective of their Olympic status, because that is a massive income generator, but also the profile it gives and the range it gives across the world. I mean, you're competing against Japan, who will obviously win between 8 and 10 of the 50 odd medals that are available. And then, France, they have 600,000 members in judo in France. and we're like Preston North End trying to play Man United, so it's in France that between now and the Paris Olympic, they're building 1,000 dojos for judo. We have 39 in this country. They're building an additional 1,000. So it's a significant. So to win medals on that stage is we're boxing well above our weight, to use that terminology.
And you mentioned about the development in this country. One of the things that you have had backing for and are working on is your new Centre of Excellence in the University of Wolverhampton, and you're staying there for the next decade or so.
Yeah, it was one of my goals when I started. We were a bit of a disparate organisation. We had a head office in Loughborough. We had a centralised training venue. We actually hired a matted area in Dartford post-Olympics. So I was wanting to try and create a home. So we did put out to tender, and Wolverhampton University built us a new dojo, built strength and conditioning offices and things like that. And we've continued to build on that. And the university has been absolutely fantastic and a great supporter for that. I was able to move the offices across to just outside at Perry Bar, and then recently, in the last 2 months, we've all moved together. So the first time the whole family is together, and we've continued to develop it. We're putting new changing rooms in, additional medical and training and physio facilities and extra office space, etc. So that is going really well, and we've sort of said and we get a lot of comments about a Centre of Excellence. Actually, it's the National Olympic and Paralympic Training Centre. That's what it is. The way I see it is we're a finishing school. A lot of clubs, a lot of the home countries do a lot of work. All we do is put the finishing touches to it and actually make them perform. So the key thing for me is we have to create an environment and a platform to allow our athletes to perform and succeed. That's our raison d'etre in the performance department. But there's a lot of work that goes behind that in terms of planning strategy. And the strategy is quite, I don't know if you're aware, but I mean, our athletes and coaches are out this country 180 days a year. So there's an awful lot of, it's a world tour, a lot of competition and camps that are away. So it is quite challenging to balance training, development, building in a strength period, bulking on or whatever, in amongst all the competitions and camps that have to be done.
Congratulations on getting everyone together. I'm wondering, when we talked about earlier about your role across all these different outlets, is there a percentage, Andrew, where you mentioned about the clubs, how much you have dealings with the clubs compared with the coaches, performance directors and the athletes elite-wise?
Yeah, it would be easy to say it's a third, and third. But over a year it probably is. But each week it is very different. And obviously through COVID it was different again. Where COVID, we did spend a lot of time putting the regulations together for the clubs, but we couldn't do a lot of club development or support clubs. There wasn't a lot happening. Whereas on the athlete side, we were able to get them back end of July, beginning of August prior to games. And that was really quite important to make sure that they had all the things that they needed. And we were able to then start to get competitions early in the following year. So putting all that together, making sure the athletes were safe and secure, putting all the protocols together, that would probably took up a lot of time in that period. Now, coming out of COVID, it sort of reverses back a little bit. How best do we actually recruit and retain more people and get our clubs back? And not all our clubs are back yet. We haven't got access to some school facilities or education facilities, the universities, or even some local authorities. And we've even lost some lets to local authorities. So it's a challenging point. And we're reinvesting now. As I said, I think we're moving into a more digital focus. How do we recruit through that? Using digital as a much stronger means to do that. And we're developing a British Judo app, which every member will get and build that on. But we have to be more specific, and it goes back to strategy about developing communities. So how can we identify clubs that are able to grow, got the capacity to grow, and how can we help them centrally to do that? And then how can they share across other clubs in their areas? So that's quite a challenge. I used to work in rugby when we had 50, 60 development officers plus about 200 or 300 community coaches. to try and set that. We've got 5. So the capacity is slightly different, but you have to, as my dad would say, box smarter to actually get what you want to do. And doing it in a challenging COVID time. You mentioned earlier the new Omicron one, judo, and other combat sports will be challenged by that, in that we're a face-to-face, close proximity contact sport. So if there are any lockdown does, we'll be first to stop, whereas probably, I'm a hockey player, so outdoor hockey would probably not get the same effect, for example. So, I mean, literally, we've never been able to do judo since the first lockdown to the actual April this year. So it's been quite a challenge for our members and our clubs to get back. And, some of them have lost their members to other sports because they've been desperate to do activity. So in order to do that, it's really quite a challenge, and we need to support our clubs. And to be fair, Sport England, through that, have helped us, as has UK Sport, in terms of keeping the funding available and being able to be flex that a little bit. But, through the Sport England Tackling Inequalities and now the Together Fund, we're able to try and invest in our clubs. And I have to applaud, Sport England and UK Sport for the way they've started to look at supporting clubs in challenging areas. So, yeah, and we'll hopefully benefit from that.
We do want to get on and talk to you about your background in hockey and rugby as well. But you've used the word challenge. I wonder, what's been the biggest challenge in your 10 years at the organisation? There's been COVID. You've had to look at the governance of the sport. You've had to deal with independent investigations around bullying, for example.
Yeah.
When you look back at that decade, what would you say has been the toughest moments?
I suppose overall, the toughest part is probably funding and changing strategy from national bodies. I mean, when I first came in, we were, although it was Olympic period, I get that, but we were on a 10.2 million over 4 years. We're now, the last cycle, we got 4.8. So, dealing with that sort of cut, dealing with cuts all the time, to be honest. And we've got a 1.8 from UK Sport cut over the next 4 years as well. So that for us is, trying to make that work. And I get it. We're not entitled to the funding. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not criticising them, but it is a big. You talk about challenge. That is a big challenge. Then you've got the elements like that. You've mentioned some of the situations we had with some of the athletes and things like that. Having to deal with that, it eats up a lot of time. But I'm pretty confident that we did it in the right way. We take these things seriously. We do it. We made sure it was independent. We made sure it was clarity, and we made sure it was done. And deal with the outcomes. And anything recommendations we've done and completed. So for me, while it's a challenge, it's sometimes the right challenge, and those things bring up that you can actually address and be better for the future. So it's a challenge, but I'm not a friend of that challenge, to be honest. And I think that's we can always learn. And I'm not perfect, so we always have to learn and develop. And there's always two sides to every story as well. So my dad would say there's two sides to a pancake. So that's my famous quote that everybody quotes me on now. So I don't take anything for granted. I always find the other side and make a balanced judgment. And if it needs to be independent, it will be independent.
We mentioned obviously, hockey, rugby. How did you then find your way into judo? When did judo come honing into view for you?
Well, I left rugby in 2011, and then the opportunity came along for a chief operating officer in judo, which I thought was quite interesting. Obviously, being in rugby, it was very much on the development side that I was involved, a community rugby director there. But the opportunity to then look at an Olympic side of things and have an overall view of things was quite attractive. So that's where that went. And then, fortunate enough, after the London Olympics, able to take the reins, as it were, which is good. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. As I say, it's not been without its challenges, and I did have hair when I started, but no, it's good. I mean, judo for me, it's very much like hockey and like most sports, to be honest. You enter a new family and you make a new family. and as families always have arguments, but they always end up, they're still family. And I think that's the attraction of working in sport, to be honest. You have your doubters and things like that, but at the end of the day, everybody's trying to do the same thing for the right reasons.
And being a former Scottish hockey player with more than 120 caps, what does that bring? What do you bring from that to being a CEO?
Oh, old age. It's quite interesting because you learn something from every part of your life that you bring to that. So, I sold crisps for a living at the very start, and you learn a lot of things of what not to do as much as what to do from those sort of things. But I mean, selling is no more different to trying to develop something. You have to sell a product. You have to, whether it's a bag of crisps or a wheel, a nut or whatever, you're still selling a sport, it's selling a product. And you have to create that attention and desire and interest, and then make a commitment to it. And that's the same for anything. So, from sales into sport development was quite an easy jump. I'd worked in administration and hockey and then development, and then I was very fortunate to be asked to join I went to Glasgow, actually. I forgot about Glasgow. So you get the local authority knowledge. So all that sort of, the jigsaw of your life and jobs and things that all piece together to, I suppose, give you a toolkit that can actually pick up on that. International wise, it's, you know what commitment is, you know where your regrets were in terms of your own performances, and what you sometimes ask, if I'd only done type of thing, I might have gone a bit further. So you can understand from an athlete's perspective. I was an international coach. You can understand from a coaching perspective. So you've got that, and then obviously, from a development point of view, I've got a fairly solid background in that. I've got background in local authority with the City Council of Glasgow, which is, I have to say, one of the most forward-thinking sports development at that point in time. And you just seem to, we started talking about the Commonwealth Games, that was way back in the 90s. So, that the plans of all that and all the facilities that are around that was relatively straightforward for Glasgow to pick that one up. And the legacy is fantastic there as well. It's not as if it's been left alone. And the appetite for Glasgow and major events is second to none, I think. So I really had a great time there. And then coming down to the 11 years at rugby was just fantastic. And again, learned a lot about managing people, making sure we had training in place. One of the first things I did to get a training manager, Will Feebury, who was there and looking after people. That's the important bit. And if you can train and develop and get people into the right position, I think you're going to do well. So all the elements piece together. As much as what to do is what not to do. It was probably my biggest learning from all of that.
Because down the road in Birmingham, there has been some controversy around British athletics and the CEO who came in, and queries about whether the fact that they weren't from the sport was detrimental. And Joanna Coates obviously resigned earlier this year. Does it matter whether you play the sport, or is it, as you say, actually just understanding what each element needs and requires?
There's a bit. I've always done. When I went to rugby, I made sure I had a go, and I did my level 1 coaching course. So you build credibility, as I look at it. You need to feel. I've always said you need to feel the sport. You need to get under its skin, and those little things go a long way in terms of turning people's opinions of it. So I've done judo. I went to Coventry Judo Club and broke my toes and stuff like that. So I've been on the mat in the centre and stuff like that. It's something I'd probably like to do, but at least you've made the effort. You've tried to understand it, and you get a feel for somebody gripping you up and throwing you down. Fortunately, the athletes throw you in a crash mat, which is very nice for them. But no, and we've tried to do that in the staff all get the opportunity to go and do it as well, so they get a feel for it. So for me, I think I thought rugby would have been the hardest one, A, Scottish, B, hockey, coming in, but again, it's how they you treat people and you get the same back. So what you put in, you get back, and probably twice as much. And you just want to be part of the family. And I think that's where, if you go in and say, oh, you've got to change this, you've got to do that, it's the wrong, for me, that would be the wrong way to do it. I have to feel the sport, get underneath the skin a little bit, and then suggest changes, win people over, and develop it from there.
And of course, in your own backyard, the Commonwealth Games is, well, very close by now. It's very much on the horizon. What kind of opportunity will that be for Birmingham as a city, and in terms of that legacy piece that you talked about with Glasgow, and then for judo, where, you know, we'll be expecting some home success and plenty of medals?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Birmingham. I think there's a wider West Midlands aspect to it, and I think that's great. I think the idea of having a wider West Midlands with swimming out at Sandwell, for example, and obviously we're down in Coventry, and along with rugby and wrestling, I think it'll be a great opportunity. I think there's a real, you can sense in and around the area, people are getting really excited and motivated by the games. They know they're not far away. Their activation is beginning to happen around Birmingham and surrounding areas and things like that, which will be really driving. And I have to say that the organising committee and the Commonwealth Games England have done a superb job so far. I mean, I can't say anything else, that they've been very supportive to all the sports. I'm really looking forward to the judo one. We're pretty well involved in that. It'll be a fantastic 3 days of competition. I think there'll be a lot of home country medals. I have to say that. Home country, because I mean, to be fair, in the Commonwealth, the 4 home countries are pretty strong. I mean, England, Scotland especially. I would expect them to pick up. I mean, the last time in Glasgow, I think England picked up 13, Scotland picked up 13 medals. The beauty of it for us is BBC picking up on the terrestrial broadcaster, and we're on the sort of day 3, 4, and 5, so quite early on. It will hopefully bring a lot of medals to the home countries. England, if you want to look at that, from that perspective, they'll be very keen on that. And the fact that we're able to showcase our talent, our Olympic champions, our Olympic medalists, and that in these events will be absolutely fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to it, and being able to activate around it, and utilising the terrestrial television exposure to benefit, to try and grow interest in the clubs all around. The difficulty we've got, like 5 or 6 days later, we've got the World Championship starting in Tashkent. So you can imagine the planning that has to go in to make sure everybody's got a relatively good run into that. So yeah, and we want to make sure that our best athletes, our best fighters are at the Commonwealth Games, but also, a Olympic qualifying event, the World Championships, a few days later. You can see how our performance team have to earn their crust to make sure we've got the right planning and timetable in place for everybody.
And just finally then, I mean, judo needs to showcase itself as a sport at that event, because as we know, the Commonwealth Games needs to change, is changing, and there won't be the guarantee of being on the programme. And we saw that obviously in Gold Coast. Yeah,
I mean, the sort of change in because we got the next 3 games, and then obviously that's changed again. Hopefully, we can showcase that, as you say. I mean, already people are desperate for tickets and things like that. So there's a lot of demand for them here, as was in Glasgow. So hopefully we can get that. And from an organising committee point of view, and that's probably where it comes down to, it's not as expensive as some of other sports to put on, if that makes sense. However, not all the Commonwealth countries are particularly strong in judo, so you got to balance all that out, because it's like the bigger nations like to get all the medals and finish up the medal table. So whoever's the host country gets the choice. But I think it's going to Canada, isn't it? Hopefully Canada in 9 years' time, because I think that's the anniversary, isn't it? So hopefully Canada's a very strong judo nation, so hopefully be back in it now.
Well, we wish England, Northern Ireland, Wales, and particularly Scotland all the best for the Commonwealth Games, and all of your British Judo athletes as well. Andrew Scoular, Chief Exec of British Judo, thank you so much for talking to Great British Bosses.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Sports Social Podcast Network.